Have you ever felt like a relationship in your life is draining you, stripping away your peace, confidence, and sense of self-worth? Maybe it's a close friend or even a family member, and you've started to notice that instead of uplifting you, they leave you feeling exhausted, guilty, or like your only value comes from how much you please them. It's a powerful realization, and one that can make you question everything about that relationship. But as Marcus Aurelius once wisely said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Recognizing this truth is the first step to reclaiming your peace. In today's video, we're going to explore 9 clear signs that it's time to step away from a relationship, even if it's someone close to you. We'll dive deep into understanding these red flags and how to protect your peace without guilt or hesitation. It's important to remember that creating distance from people who are draining you isn't selfish. In fact, it's one of the healthiest steps you can take to honor yourself and protect your self-respect. Imagine this. Is there someone in your life who constantly makes you feel guilty, judged, or like you only have value when you're meeting their needs or fulfilling their desires? If so, you might be dealing with one of the most toxic dynamics in relationships. This kind of energy can eat away at your spirit, leaving you feeling small, powerless, and disconnected from who you truly are. The first step is recognizing it for what it is: unhealthy, unbalanced, and something that needs to be addressed. Here's the thing. Good relationships, whether with friends, family, or a partner, are built on mutual care, respect, and support. If you're in a relationship where you feel like you're always the one giving and giving, but never receiving the same level of care or effort in return, that's a clear sign that the balance has tipped. A healthy relationship is a two-way street, and if it starts to feel more like a one-way road, it's time to reassess. Let's talk about the first sign. Avoid people who never seem to have money. Have you ever met someone who, whenever you make plans, somehow doesn't have enough money? Maybe they always have some excuse about why they can't contribute to a trip or a group outing. On the surface, it may seem like a reasonable excuse, but when you look closer, it's often a pattern that goes deeper than just a financial issue. These people might be living a comfortable life, enjoying their own pleasures, indulging in hobbies, or going on trips. But when it comes to contributing or making plans with you, they suddenly don't have the funds. This isn't about struggling financially, it's about a deeper issue. I once had a friend who would always make excuses about not having enough money whenever we planned something together. But I noticed that despite his claims of being broke, he had no hesitation spending money on personal luxuries, like impressing others with expensive outings or buying things he didn't need. It became clear to me that it wasn't about the money. It was about how little he valued my presence and time. In any relationship, whether it's a friend, family member, or partner, mutual respect and sharing are essential. If you're constantly giving, whether it's time, resources, or emotional energy, and the other person is simply taking without reciprocating, the relationship becomes unbalanced. At that point, it's no longer a healthy connection, but rather a one-sided, draining dynamic. It's important to set boundaries and, when necessary, distance yourself from people who take without giving back. When you notice these signs in your relationships, it's a clear indication that it's time to create some space. Relationships should add value to your life, not leave you feeling drained, used, or undervalued. And once you understand this, you can start making empowered decisions about who stays and who goes. Now, let's look at another red flag: people who are constantly involved in quarrels and drama. Have you ever been in a relationship where every conversation somehow turns into a battle? Every minor issue is blown out of proportion, and you're drawn into arguments that seem to have no end. These people often thrive on conflict, and no matter how small the disagreement, they escalate it into a heated argument, dragging everyone else into their chaos. I had a friend like this once. On the surface, he seemed confident and outgoing, but whenever there was a difference of opinion, he would immediately turn it into a confrontation. It was draining to be around him. One evening, we were with a group of friends discussing plans for a trip, and a simple disagreement came up. He insisted I back him up in front of everyone, turning a casual conversation into a full-blown argument. That moment marked a turning point in our friendship. I realized that if someone is constantly stirring up conflicts and pressuring others to pick sides, maintaining a balanced and healthy relationship with them becomes impossible. People who argue all the time aren't showing strength. They're revealing a lack of emotional control and an underlying insecurity. Constant fighting isn't a sign of intelligence or strength. It's a reflection of unresolved inner turmoil and a lack of emotional maturity. True wisdom doesn't come from always needing to win the argument. It comes from knowing when to let go of the need to be right. Wise people prioritize peace and understanding over ego and conflict. If you find yourself frequently caught up in unnecessary arguments or pressure to pick sides, it's time to step back and reevaluate that relationship. Protecting your inner peace is far more important than engaging in endless debates. When you choose to foster calmness and avoid conflict, not only are you protecting your relationships, but you're also safeguarding your mental and emotional health. Life is too short to be constantly surrounded by people who thrive on drama and tension. By recognizing this pattern, you can create space for relationships that are nurturing and uplifting, rather than ones that drain your energy and peace of mind. The next sign to watch for is people who take your worries lightly. Life is filled with challenges, and we all carry different burdens. We each have our own unique set of joys, struggles, and worries, and it's natural to seek support when life feels overwhelming. But there's a heartbreaking feeling when you confide in someone about your struggles, and instead of receiving empathy or understanding, your concerns are brushed off or belittled. I remember a time when I opened up to a longtime friend about the challenges I was facing, balancing work while caring for my aging parents. It was an exhausting time for me, both physically and emotionally, but instead of offering a listening ear, my friend glossed over my struggles and immediately shifted the conversation to his own issues. It was as if my pain didn't matter, and his struggles were the only ones that deserved attention. That moment left me feeling disappointed, but it also made me realize that relationships cannot thrive if there's no mutual respect for each other's burdens. True empathy comes from recognizing and valuing another person's experience, whether it's joy or sorrow. If someone dismisses your struggles or only ever talks about their own, it's a red flag that the relationship is imbalanced and lacks the compassion needed to create a strong foundation. Respect in a relationship doesn't always have to be grand gestures. Sometimes it's as simple as taking the time to truly listen, to say thank you when help is given, or to offer a genuine apology when you've caused harm. It's in these small, everyday acts that trust is built and the relationship grows stronger. It's essential to distance yourself from people who lack this fundamental respect. People who can't empathize with your pain or celebrate your victories are not people who are truly invested in your well-being. They may be indifferent, or worse, they may take pleasure in your suffering. Building relationships with people who share in your joy, console you in your sorrow, and genuinely wish for your happiness is crucial for your emotional health. When you surround yourself with those who recognize and value your struggles, as well as their own, you create an environment where everyone can thrive. Compassion and respect are the pillars of meaningful connections, and if someone can't offer that, it's time to move on. Next, let's explore a crucial sign: Avoid people who try to enforce their religious or political beliefs on you. We all know that no two people are the same, and this difference is what makes relationships truly meaningful. The beauty of connection lies in embracing those differences, not in imposing our beliefs or values on others. Yet, there are always those individuals who insist that their way of thinking is the only right way. Whether it's politics, religion, or even lifestyle choices, they push their perspective onto you, leaving no space for your own opinions or values. I had a close friend once who would constantly try to convince me that his beliefs were the only correct ones. We would have long debates, but these debates weren't about understanding each other's perspectives. They were about him trying to convert me to his way of thinking. At first, I engaged, thinking maybe we could find common ground, but after every conversation, I felt emotionally drained, and the friendship began to feel like a battle. Over time, I realized that these conversations weren't helping either of us. They were pulling us further apart. No matter how much I tried to express my views, he wouldn't listen. It wasn't about building a shared understanding. It was about him needing to be right. This constant pressure to adopt someone else's views is not just exhausting, it's a deep violation of personal boundaries. People who constantly argue for the sake of proving their beliefs to others are often doing it out of a need for validation, not out of genuine desire for connection. True connection comes from listening, empathizing, and recognizing that we all have different paths. Arguing to prove your point doesn't strengthen relationships, it fractures them. It's important to understand that no one has the right to impose their beliefs on you, especially if it makes you feel uncomfortable, judged, or misunderstood. A healthy relationship allows space for differing opinions, where both people can respect each other's views without trying to change one another. So, if you find yourself in relationships where the focus shifts from mutual respect to an ongoing power struggle over who's right, it's time to step back. Let go of the need to argue and instead choose relationships that are built on listening, understanding, and a willingness to grow together. The real victory in relationships isn't about proving who's right. It's about finding common ground, learning from each other, and fostering mutual respect. Let go of the need to always be right and watch your relationships flourish with authenticity and peace. Let's dive into another important sign: avoiding those who make you feel distressed every time you meet them. Have you ever had a friend who, at one time, brought so much joy and laughter into your life, but now, when you see them, something feels off? The connection seems forced, and there's an underlying sense of discomfort or tension. Sometimes, it doesn't even mean you did something wrong or that they've become a bad person. It simply means that life has taken both of you down different paths, and the connection that once existed no longer fits. I recall a story from a colleague of mine who had a childhood friend with whom he shared many unforgettable moments. They spent years together, watching movies, playing sports, dreaming about the future. But as time passed, life pulled them in different directions. One of them moved to a new city, building a career and a family, while the other stayed in their hometown, leading a simpler, quieter life. Over the years, their rare reunions began to feel strained. The conversations felt stiff, polite, and devoid of the deep connection they once shared. At first, my colleague tried to hold on to the friendship, desperately trying to recreate what had once been. But the more he tried, the more he realized that they had both changed too much to find that old connection again. Instead of continuing to force the relationship, he made the wise decision to step back. It wasn't that he no longer cared for his friend, but he recognized that sometimes letting go is the best way to honor the changes both of you have gone through. Relationships are like a dance. They require both people to move in harmony. When the rhythm no longer aligns, it's not about blame. It's about recognizing that both of you are on different paths now. Life evolves, and so do we. This doesn't mean you erase the person from your life, but it might mean accepting that the relationship no longer fits who you are at this stage in your journey. Stepping back from a relationship doesn't always have to be about severing ties completely. Sometimes it's about giving each other the space to grow in your own directions. A gentle parting can be far healthier than forcing a connection that no longer works. It doesn't diminish the value of the memories you've shared. It simply means you're honoring the changes you've both experienced. Life is full of transitions, and so are relationships. Understanding when to hold on and when to let go is an essential part of personal growth. Cherish the memories, but don't be afraid to let that relationship become a part of your past. Sometimes letting go isn't about disrespecting the other person. It's about respecting yourself and recognizing that it's time to move forward. The next important sign to watch out for is people who continuously complain about their lives without ever making any attempt to change their circumstances. We all have our moments of venting, of needing someone to listen when life feels overwhelming, and that's completely natural. However, when someone uses you as their emotional dumping ground, constantly unloading their frustrations and complaints without ever seeking a solution, it becomes emotionally draining. I remember a friend named Sarah, a former colleague I was once very close to. During a particularly challenging time in my life when I was caring for my critically ill mother, I found myself struggling emotionally. Yet Sarah, rather than offering support or empathy, would come to me daily to complain about her job, her husband, and everything else that was wrong in her life. She never paused to ask how I was doing or to offer any comfort. She was completely absorbed in her own problems. At first, I listened because I felt it was what friends were supposed to do. But soon, it became clear that Sarah wasn't seeking advice or comfort. She just wanted someone to absorb her negativity. And even though I was emotionally drained from caring for my mother, I continued to support her, hoping she might reciprocate. But that never happened. It got to the point where I felt like I was being pulled into her emotional whirlwind every time we spoke. One day, after my mother had undergone major surgery, Sarah called me to complain that I hadn't responded to her messages quickly enough. That was the moment I realized I needed to set boundaries. I had to tell her, "Sarah, I can't keep doing this. I have too much on my plate right now, and I need the people around me to understand and support me." The conversation was difficult, and after that, there was a growing distance between us, but it was a necessary step for my own well-being. I couldn't allow myself to be used as an emotional receptacle without the consideration of my own needs. We all need to recognize that not all sadness needs to be shared, and not everyone is seeking support for a resolution. Sometimes people use others as an emotional drain, and it's important to protect yourself from that. Listening and empathizing are beautiful qualities, but they should be reciprocated. If someone is not genuinely seeking a solution or resolution, it's okay to set boundaries and step back. In these situations, it's crucial to be selective with your listening. You don't have to carry the burden of other people's negativity, especially if they aren't interested in making a change. Cultivating meaningful relationships requires mutual understanding, where both sides feel valued and heard. Listening is a skill, and it's important to use it with those who genuinely care about your well-being as well. The last sign is avoiding people who take promises lightly or break them without remorse. Have you ever waited for someone who promised to be there but didn't show up, offering only flimsy excuses or no explanation at all? This kind of behavior slowly erodes trust and makes you feel like you're not a priority in their life. A promise is more than just words, it's a commitment. When someone constantly breaks promises, they're showing a lack of respect for you and your time. I once had a friend who would regularly cancel plans at the last minute, always with a vague excuse. One time, we had planned to meet at my favorite coffee shop, and after waiting for over an hour, I finally received a message from her saying, "I totally forgot we had plans today, sorry." This wasn't the first time it had happened, and I realized that continuing to endure this behavior was only hurting myself. She didn't mean to hurt me, but her disregard for my time spoke volumes. Respecting promises is a cornerstone of healthy relationships. When people consistently break their word, it reflects a lack of commitment and consideration for your time and feelings. If a relationship is built on empty promises, it's a sign that it's time to reconsider its value. You deserve relationships where both sides show up for each other, where actions align with words. When someone can't honor their commitments, it's a clear indication that they're not invested in the relationship, and it's okay to walk away. Respect yourself enough to let go of people who don't respect your time or energy. By doing so, you're making room for relationships that are built on trust, mutual care, and understanding. And finally, avoid people who boast excessively about their past achievements. Have you ever met someone who constantly brings the conversation back to their past successes, as if those moments were the only valuable parts of their life? At first, you might find it interesting or even admire them for their accomplishments. But over time, you begin to realize that these stories are a facade, hiding a lack of fulfillment and meaning in their present life. I once knew someone who would constantly talk about the prestigious awards he had won years ago. Every conversation would circle back to his past triumphs, but when it came to discussing his current life, he would deflect or avoid the topic. It became clear that he was stuck in the past, using his old accomplishments to validate his worth. But instead of feeling admiration, people started distancing themselves from him. Boasting about past achievements doesn't elevate anyone's worth. It actually diminishes it. True self-confidence comes from living in the present and being humble about what you've accomplished. People who constantly look back at their past to validate themselves are often struggling with feelings of inadequacy in the present. True fulfillment comes from growth and authenticity, not from clinging to past glories. A confident person doesn't need to flaunt their past achievements. They live with humility and let their current life speak for itself. Humility strengthens relationships and builds trust, while excessive boasting only creates distance.